Urza with that one Pyre Spellbomb, one Ether Spellbomb. Whetstone on Infect. Should be a pretty interesting match. Might be a quick match, so we'll probably be able to show you 2 matches this round thanks to our time-shifted technology.
And bad news for Whetstone, good news for Belisle. He's on the play, fetching a Misty Rainforest. In fact, definitely a deck that wants to siege that early initiative. We'll see how much damage Belisle can do. Our Urza player in round 1 never really had an explosive start. There was a lot of land go going on.
Right. I think the most explosive start came from Hull in just one game. He went Thought Scour into Death Shadow Stubborn Denial, you know. That's a pretty good start. Belisle here actually with an interesting build of Team Urza actually has a copy of Noble Hierarch to complement the 4 Gilded Goose to give him a bit more acceleration. I quite like it.
Fetches the 19 for Snow-Covered Forest. Gilded Goose, make a food token go. Here's a nice one. Belisle actually playing 2 main deck copies of Future Sight.
Yeah, I've actually heard some chatter. After watching the Teamer version last weekend in the hands of Ross Merriam and such, I heard a bit of talk about people just playing Future Sight because it works so well with Urza Lord High Artificer. Not only do you just have a way to dump all that extra mana, but you also can just reset the top of your deck with a spin.
Right, not that much harder to cast an Experimental Frenzy. You know, it's an extra mana, it's triple blue, but your deck's heavily blue,
right,
and you get to play your counter spells out of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Noble Hierarch on 1 from Whetstone off of a Waterlogged Grove, so 19 alls. We go back to Belisle, and he will shock to 17 for that turn 2 Oko.
Yeah, and turn 2 Oko on the play is quite strong because now Belisle can choose to start basically poofing all these creatures into Elk, which means that eventually the food tokens are going to be quite good here too. So it's going to be interesting to see if Whetstone can actually just kill this Oko right now. Something like a, the Crawworm one. The new one. Scale Up. Scale Up here can't single-handedly take down the Oko, and if he has it, that might be the play instead of advancing the board a bit because the Oko will eventually take over.
Oko goes to 6, replaces the food token, the Goose 8. Land 2 for Whetstone is Inkmoth Nexus. That one's tough to Oko.
That's true. That's a hot one.
Looks like Hierarch and Nexus will tap for Blighted Agent. Extra threat there, and Whetstone will pass with Waterlogged Grove up.
Yeah, and Whetstone can choose to try to protect the Blighted Agent with one of those protection spells, whether it be Blossoming Defense or Vines of Vastwood, from that Oko Plus. The problem is you're spending a card to counter a +1 from a Planeswalker. Not really the best use of your resources, but in the short term, if you can use that and leverage that advantage to close the game on the follow-up turn, that's usually how these Infect decks kind of steal games away from the Team Urza strats.
Oko goes to 7. Something's getting goosed, or at least an attempt at a goosing. Elking. Elking's the one.
Ooh.
Blighted Agent.
Doesn't choose to fight over it. That gives him a way to actually pressure the Oko pretty easily. Thanks to that Noble Hierarch with Exalted. It could be a way for him to maybe chop down the Oko next turn if there's not a chop block from that Gilded Goose. But I think Whetstone's way more likely to try to start going for the kill via Inkmoth Nexus, and that Gilded Goose could pose a problem just because it does have flying.
Belisle fetches to 16 for a Snow-Covered Island. Potential for a 4-mana play here. Got to be a little wary of that Inkmoth Nexus, though.
Yeah. Whetstone does have 2 copies of Spell Pierce here, so could have that as a means to stifle a Cryptic Command or even Archmage's Charm on the next turn. It'd be interesting to see if Belisle has one of those pieces of interaction that's not the counter spells, you know, that Pyre Spellbomb or the Galvanic Blast. Or even the Ren 6.
Yeah, the Ether Spellbomb could be quite good. It's going to be Arkham's Astrolabe off of the Snow-Covered Island, and a second Gilded Goose, so some potential blockers for the Nexus. Certainly buy some time that way. As he makes a second food token.
All right, pass turn back to Whetstone now. Let's see what he can do. I'm curious. I don't think he's going to be able to kill this turn because of those 2 Gilded Goose's blockers, but something like Distortion Strike could go a long way at just making sure that the game ends very quickly. Now, leading on Waterlogged Grove for Whetstone leads me to believe that he actually doesn't have another green source unless it was drawn in the last 2 turns.
Yeah, often means you're land light, right?
Because you don't really want to deal yourself chip damage. If you have like a fetch land that you want to go get a breeding pool, you want to pay that 3 life up front and then maybe don't take any damage from Waterlogged Grove as the game progresses.
Noble Hierarch casts Noble Hierarch. Waterlogged Grove fires up the Nexus. Whetstone to 18. Looks like 3 poison coming across. See if a goose wants to block.
I just want consistency and direction of tapping. That's all I want. Is that too much to ask?
I love this.
This is kind of like lands in front, you know?
No.
Kind of.
You know what's happening here.
I do.
Are you saying that the lands in front thing is done deliberately to confuse people? Because
No, that's not
This is purposely. The issue with lands in front is it's very counterintuitive because creatures engage in the middle. That's how it's supposed to be done. The tapping both ways is like, that's fine. Maybe it's frustrating for the opponent. I thought that's where you were going.
My eyeballs.
For your
for
eyeballs.
Me. It hurts me personally.
Looking at art upside down in every which way is how I identify magic cards. So it doesn't. I actually can't even tell. I wouldn't have noticed.
But if I see one right side up and I see one upside down, my brain's like, that ain't cool.
Doesn't impact me at all.
Okay. Okay, so what if you put the Noble Hierarch with the lands and the Noble Hierarch was just facing a different way? That wouldn't mess with you?
If you put it diagonal, that would mess with me.
A classic 45-degree tapper?
Yeah, where you like don't know if it's tapped or not.
Oh, yeah.
That's where you bug me.
I was not insinuating anything malicious. I just hated it.
All right, Mox Amber, Mishra's Bauble for Belisle.
Yeah, all the mana in the world here. Let's see if Belisle can cobble together something. That's a good one.
That's not bad. I need explosives on 1.
Yeah,
It
but
would cost the gooses.
it would cost the geese.
Gooses. That's how card names work, Todd. When you pluralize a card name, you add an S to the end. That is actually grammatically correct. Nimble mongooses, gilded gooses.
You're making me so mad right now.
And your explosives pops off. The gooses and the hierarchs are down. And Oko's going to do something. Might be waking up a food.
Okay.
Elkified. One of the foods. Going to rumble across for 3 as an elk.
I just don't want to talk anymore. All right. Well, the explosives was a hefty cost for Belisle, but it is going to constrict the mana quite a bit from Whetstone. Those Nobles Hierarch.
Love it.
I mean, I don't know. Those Noble Hierarchs are now gone, but it came at the cost of multiple copies of Gilded Goose and the Arkham's Astrolabe.
So I believe that the elk knocked Whetstone to 15. There it is, and now to 14 off of the Grove. Inkmoth Nexus comes across again. Elk hangs back, though it did not block last turn. The Nexus connects. Belisle to 4 poison. He will bobble Whetstone on end step.
Yeah, I assume that Whetstone here just has scale up or just a slew of pump spells and needs to draw another land to be able to cast them is the gist. But here, Whetstone gonna try to trade his elkified blighted agent with an elk from the other side just to protect his life total. Hopefully to buy enough time to actually close the game, either next turn or the turn after. But if Belisle has like any interaction, Whetstone does not have the mana to be able to fight over anything at all.
Belisle shocks to 12 for a stomping ground and casts Future Sight.
That's a good one, but it's not really for this matchup. This is not a grindy scenario, right?
Yeah. Ideally, it can help him win quickly, though that Scalding Tarn off the top's not going anywhere just yet, as he has made his land drop. But yeah, like you said, grinding not really the thing. Mostly needs to not die to this Inkmoth Nexus, which with Whetstone being light on mana, it seems like he should be able to have at least another turn.
Yeah, but if Whetstone has a scale up and just draws a land, the game ends.
True.
There are no free spells from Belisle's side. He's going to offer the trade to protect his life total. Has a mutagenic growth. That's a hot one. And that's going to allow him to effectively eat that token and keep the elk around. So now he can use that to pressure the opposing Oko or to just play defense yet again and trade with the elk next turn.
Whetstone still takes 5 from the trouble There was an attack for 2 with 2 elks as the Oko woke up the other food. Whetstone at 9 after eating 1 with that growth plus elk.
I doubt Whetstone drew a land. So I think it would have been put on the battlefield and the game would have ended on the spot. The fact that he burned that mutagenic growth, in my opinion, means that Whetstone has a scale up. Otherwise, any +4/+4 with the mutagenic would have been lethal this turn with a land.
Right. Elk coming at Oko. Down to 6 loyalty, I believe. Waterlogged Grove activated again. Whetstone to 8 and Blighted Agent deployed. Right, Belisle draws that Scalding Tarn. Has a Mistress Bauble on top from the Future Sight. Can just cast that off the top. Next card is Arkham's Astrolabe.
One of the weird parts about Experimental Frenzy is that it actually it locks your hand, right? So anything that says draw a card on it's actually quite mediocre. But with Future Sight, not only do you get all the cards drawn, you can still cast them from hand, but you still get that same effect like the Experimental Frenzy where you can just keep playing off the top of your deck. So it's effectively the same card, but it's mono blue, and it unlocks your hand for 1 extra mana. So
the Astrolabe was cast, and this could be a relevant pickup. Pyrite Spellbomb drawn against this little mana, that can really check the Nexus. We see Belisle then has an Emery on top. He'll cast that. Oko, Snow-Covered Island, Mox Opal, and the Scalding Tarn milled by the Emery, and then Engineered Explosives on top after that. A lot of artifacts hanging around, though no Urza, so not that much mana available. Looks like Explosives on 0 cast, and then another Oko. That one might be the stopping point for the Future Sight this turn.
yeah, well, he did have the fetch land at the ready, so he's going to be able to reset the top of the deck, and now gets a fresh look, at the very least.
Going to be Cavalier with the life total as you do against Infect, fetching and shocking for Breeding Pool, down to 11.
You never know when you're going to need that green mana. Now, we do know that Belisle has that Pyrite Soul on hand, if I'm not mistaken, and that, coupled with Emery, Lurker of the Lock, is pretty dangerous for Whetstone.
Ooh, Galvanic Blast now on top, so a lot of potential interaction for Belisle. Cast Mox Opal from hand. Still has that Pyrite Spellbomb in hand as well, and he will deploy that. So now leaving up Spellbomb and Galvanic Blast.
I believe there's still an Oko activation at the ready as well.
Yep, that is correct, and here it goes. The second Blighted Agent, now Elked. That one's a lot easier to come across with for lethal than the Nexus is, so that play makes sense. And now Belisle passes the turn.
Well, even though he doesn't have an Urza at the ready, Belisle does have a ton of mana thanks to the lands as well as 2 different Moxen.
Did a fair amount of damage that turn, setting up the 2 interactive spells, and things really get worse over time pretty quickly with that Future Sight.
Yeah, it's very good in a deck with so many cheap cards.
Not looking like Whetstone's happy with his position. He's been stuck on just 2 lands ever since those Hierarchs were exploded by the Engineered Explosives. Second Inkmoth Nexus.
I want to point out this Temur Urza deck from Belisle is a bit different than what we're used to seeing over the last few months with these Urza Oko decks. He actually has no Cryptic commands at all in the 75, if I'm not mistaken. I think the Future Sight kind of plays that card advantage role the Cryptic command would utilize.
Yeah, just Metallic Rebuke for counters in the main deck.
Yep. Doesn't have the land either, the Mystic Sanctuary.
All right, it looks like things have gone Sean Belisle's way in game number 1. Whetstone just kind of had no good attacks there. Future Sight was doing its thing. Mana Woes made things pretty easy for Belisle in game number 1.
No, and I mean that whole game hinged on that Engineer Explosives on the whatever 3rd or 4th turn, where Belisle was willing to trade 2 copies of Gilded Goose and Arkham's Astrolabe and the Ancient Explosives just to trim Whetstone's mana. He was able to kill 2 copies of Noble Hierarch, and that really, really set him back.
So the sideboard for John Whetstone, he has 3 Veil of Summer, 3 Oko Thief of Crowns, 2 Dismember, 2 Tarmogoyf, 2 Spellskite, a Mystical Dispute, a Spell Pierce, and a Distortion Strike.
Well, Whetstone might sideboard here like Belisle has access to all those counterspells, those Archmage's Charms and such, because the build from Belisle is a bit different than what I'm used to seeing, so it might be different from what Whetstone's used to seeing as well. So those Veil Summers might come in, but they're not actually that good. Oko Thief of Crowns is a way for Whetstone to tackle Urza, put some pressure on the opponent in various ways, so that might come in. The Dismembers, I think, are pretty good. They just kill Emery or Urza for 1 mana. Tarmogoyf, if he wants to go that route with Oko, could come in as well. Although, I would not be surprised if both Oko and Tarmogoyf stayed on the sidelines. The Infect strategy is quite strong against Urza, but Whetstone was just unable to cobble together enough mana to actually get the job done. Spellskite's okay, but it does get hit by Oko pretty easily. And then, of course, Mystical Dispute is definitely going to come in, and I would expect the Spell Pierce to come in as well.
That's the sideboard for Sean Belisle. 3 Blood Moon, 3 Anger of the Gods, 2 Ceremonious Rejection, 2 Mystical Disputes of his own, 2 Veil of Summers of his own, 2 Ashiok Dreamrender, and a Disdainful Stroke.
Blood Moon is secretly good in this matchup. The Ingmar Nexus are pretty tough to beat. You can deal with Glistener Elf by just blocking it. You can deal with Blighted Agent by just killing it with a removal spell whenever your opponent lets their shields down, or you just can overwhelm them with your Oko pluses targeting the Blighted Agents like we saw in Game 1. Now, Blood Moon, though, just shuts off Ingmar Nexus, and that's step 1. Step 2 is sometimes they just draw a bunch of Waterlogged Groves and die. And you can cast a Blood Moon on turn 2. Well, technically turn 1 with a bunch of Mox Opals, but you can cast Blood Moon on turn 2 with regularity out of this Temur Urza deck, and it's going to be problematic for Whetstone unless he fetches up a basic force early, and even then it still might shut him off of blue mana and being unable to cast things like Spell Pierce, Blighted Agent down the line.
Yeah, in fact, notoriously a 2-color deck that only plays 1 color of basic land as well.
Yeah, I mean, the basic island is heinous. Your deck is...
Right.
Mostly green, so any island drawn is usually dead. I know a lot of people do play the island, but I highly recommend against it. It would just be useful against Blood Moon specifically.
So this is our second open stop. We're still young in Season 1 of the 2020 season here on the SCG Tour. We were in Columbus last weekend. We're in Knoxville right now, but if you're looking for a stop in the future, February 1st and 2nd, we'll be in Richmond for a team-constructed open. That means Standard, Pioneer, Modern now.
Ooh, yeah.
The 8th and 9th weekend after, we'll be in Philadelphia for another format of the same variety, team constructed again.
Yep.
February 22nd and 23rd, we're in Indianapolis. That's a Pioneer Open.
I'm going to be there.
That's our first Pioneer
Are you coming? Can you please come and we can hang out? And
I'll either be playing or commentating. There's some stuff going on with the schedule right now. I will be there in some capacity.
Good. Love to hear it.
And then kind of across the country, we're going to have our regional championships March 7th. Those are going to be modern, as they typically are these days. Week after, March 14th and 15th, we're in Baltimore for another Pioneer Open. Heck yes. March 22nd and 21st, Syracuse. Back to modern at that point in time. April 4th and 5th, we're in Atlanta. These ones, they have been. These ones are not announced yet, right? Yeah. So these are TBD formats. We'll see where Modern's at, where Pioneer's at, what have you. We're going to respond to feedback, see what the players want, give you the best possible tournaments when these come around.
For sure.
April 25th and 26th, we're in Worcester, Mass. May 2nd and 3rd, Cincinnati. May 23rd and 24th, we're in Louisville. And then the 30th and 31st in Philadelphia for the last open of the season before we wrap things up for Season 1. June 11th to 14th at SCGKN Summer in sunny Roanoke, Virginia for SCGKN there.
I'm going to be at that one for sure. It takes me a flight to get basically anywhere, right? When you live on the West Coast. I am definitely coming to Indianapolis. There's a DreamHack $100,000 tournament 30 minutes from my house the same weekend, and I am choosing, instead of playing in that, to go to Indianapolis to hang out with some good friends of mine.
Hell yeah.
And I really hope that you come too.
Oh, I'll be there. I'll be there.
Right? Because
I will either.
I was insinuating that you weren't a good friend of mine.
Oh yeah, you're good friends plus me. See, you can't hurt my feelings. I feel too good about myself. John
That's
Whetstone
awesome to hear.
on a mulligan to 5 here.
I'm so happy. Unlike Jonathan Whetstone on 5 cards. Infect is notorious for mulliganing a bunch just because the deck is basically just dual-sided in nature. It has threats and has pump spells. Neither play well without the other. So if you have a draw that features too many creatures, that's pretty bad. If you have a draw that features too many pump spells and no creatures, that's also pretty bad. Once Upon a Time has helped significantly in alleviating those woes, though it only fixes the half of finding the threat.
Whetstone does keep on 5, fires off that Once Upon a Time. Take a look at 5 more, see what he can find. Slow roll on the 5th card means that maybe he has not found what he was specifically looking for.
My favorite is just ripping the top one and just putting it on the table because that's the one that, like, I know what I want, right? I don't even need to look at the rest. It's like I need an infector. It's like, okay, we hit a Glistener Elf, you're dead.
Found Inkmoth Nexus, that's a good one. Used to play a lot with Josh Radin. He's the player famous for
Is he the lightning bolt guy from Mortal Kombat?
No, shut up. That's Radin.
You said his name was John Radin.
Josh Radin.
Josh Gruden?
I'm going to finish my story if that's all right with everybody. He's the progenitor of the statement, "You're never supposed to cast Brainstorm." Yeah, that's largely become wisdom and legacy. And he would always draw up like the first 4 or 5 cards of his hand, say keep, and then draw the last 2 or 3 and say bonus cards. So Whetstone fetched to 17 for a Breeding Pool, Noble Hierarch on turn 1. Belisle is going to match that mana development, shocks for Stomping Ground to 18 and has Gilded Goose.
Yeah, but Stomping Ground is not the best land to lead off with here, so that could mean something from Belisle, or that could have just been his only source of green.
Turn 2, we see that Inkmoth Nexus for Whetstone, and Blighted Agent will join it.
Now, like I was saying earlier, just because Belisle doesn't have those Cryptic Commands and those Archmage's Charms in his deck, there's no real reason to play Mystic Sanctuary. Metallic Rebuke seems like the only real thing to get back other than Galvanic Blast. And so he actually doesn't have to have a ton of islands and snow islands. He can choose to play a little more fast and loose with his mana base. Outside of Arkham's Astrolabe, there's no real reason to not play stuff like Waterlogged Grove, which is what he's playing. And yeah, I mean, he has 6 snow-covered lands and 8 fetches like normal, but also choosing to play the full suite of one each of those shock lands for Teamer colors.
Belisle's going to fetch up a snow-covered island off of a Scalding Tarn down to 17. See if he can have that turn 2 Oko. Not Oko, but it is Blood Moon. You mentioned this one could be a nice haymaker here.
Now, he does have Noble Hierarch, but if he doesn't have an actual basic forest, he's probably in trouble. Unless he can... I mean, to be fair, that Blighted Agent next turn is going to attack for 2. And he has access to at least 1 colored source of mana with Noble Hierarch.
Whetstone floated a mana and then dejectedly went to his turn.
Yeah. I'm not going to say that I'm really smart. I'm going to let you say it.
Todd, you're really smart.
Thank you. Thank you.
You identified that Blood Moon was good against the deck with lands that needed to be not mountains.
Right. Right.
Not everyone sees that.
Yeah.
There's the snow-covered forest, though, and here's an attack for 2 with the Blighted Agent.
Basic forest from Whetstone. Don't need the fetch land. Just had it. But didn't have the kill. Might have a couple pieces of protection for the Blighted Agent, though, so we actually have a game on our hands instead of Blood Moon just running away with it.
Yeah, which you do see sometimes. Amusingly, Belisle cannot make food with the goose just yet, as Snow-Covered Island is his second land. Plays a Mox Opal. That's the first artifact on this battlefield.
Yeah, I had to use the food token.
Ooh, and Engineer Explosives on 2. That is a powerful pickup. We'll see how quickly Whetstone can close, because that Blighted Agent is not long for this world.
Yeah, and unfortunately, something like Scale Up is not quite lethal. It's not a +6/+6. It's just turns into a 6/6, so Scale Up alone, not quite enough.
Another 0 mana artifact would have turned on explosives. Belisle doesn't have it, which means Whetstone gets 1 more turn here. Ends up cast Once Upon a Time. That's not great at producing more damage next turn.
Yeah, like I said, Once Upon a Time is great for finding threats. It's not great for finding the ways to kill your opponent if you have the threats. I actually think that there's a potential that these Infect decks need to trim a little bit on the Infectors since they're playing 4 copies of Once Upon a Time.
Blighted Agent picked up. I imagine he will not be casting that one next turn, not until that Engineered Explosives on 2.
No, but it is a fine follow-up to the Explosives once his Blighted Agent is down.
Whetstone draws for turn. Does he have an avenue to lethal?
Although there's a chance that Belisle just never cracks the Engineered Explosives until the attack is lethal. That's a pretty common line of play against Infect where the only, well, technically with life total or Infect, the only point that matters is the last one. And you don't take damage from every single creature. You just take damage from the Infect creatures. So if you hold the Engineered Explosives on X equals 2, you can afford to take 2 more hits for sure from that Blighted Agent. And at any point, if it becomes lethal via Pump Spell or what have you, then you can blow the Engineered Explosives. But until then, you keep the one that Whetstone has in hand kind of locked there.
The Agent came across. Belisle now 4 times poisoned. Like you said, though, 4's not 10. He'll just go back to his turn. Strong incentive to leave this Explosives on cracked and 2 mana up. We'll see what he produces. He's going to Galvanic Blast the Blighted Agent. He knows about a second one in Whetstone's hand, but at some point or another, the Explosives catches one of them, right? Blossoming Defense will protect. And that's all Belisle's going to do. He'll pass, leaves that Engineered Explosives up.
Personally, I like choosing to fight in spots where my opponent might not be prepared to fight. I usually like to let them make the first move. Main phasing the Galvanic Blast does make a lot of sense, though, because if you do it during their upkeep or their attack step or what have you, the Pump Spell is usually that protects it. It's like Blossoming Defense, so it results in more Infect damage. So.
Yeah, post-combat or on your turn. That's largely when you want to do it. So the Agent attacks again. Belisle now up to 6 poison. No further action from Whetstone. We go back to Belisle. Still leaving Explosives up. Starts his turn with Arkham's Astrolabe.
That does turn on the Mox Opal as well, so now has access to green mana if he wants to make a food token.
Looks like he's thinking about casting some more spells on his turn here.
Yeah, maybe just using that for green now to cast another Goose, yeah.
And Mox Opal for Goose. Get another food token out there. Still leaving up 2 for Explosives. Just increasing that position a little bit more every turn as we go back to Whetstone.
Yeah, I like to compare this Oko Urza deck to, in wrestling terms, they're the,
the heel?
No, well, yes, but more so they're the figure 4, like
it's a submission maneuver.
They win via submission, not with big flashy things. Oko over the course of the game just kind of grinds you out. Like imagine someone having you in a headlock, and every time they activate Oko, they're just cranking on you a little more, grinding a little more.
So a second Noble Hierarch committed from Whetstone. The Agent attacked for 3 poison, a little shy of lethal, but that does get the Explosives from Belisle. Now we go back Belisle's way. And Whetstone used the Noble Hierarch to cast the second Hierarch. We know about a Blighted Agent in hand. Wasn't able to cast that there.
No, but that's really heads-up play from Belisle where he chooses to go ahead and pop the Engineered Explosive, save him 2 points when he knows that Whetstone can't redeploy the other Blighted Agent in hand.
I mean, my question is, do you think that Whetstone is up to something with this green mana? Well, it looks like it wasn't. As Oko is deployed for Belisle, makes a food token, and we go back to Whetstone.
Well, he doesn't have something like Nature's Claim in the sideboard, which used to be a lot more common for Infect because it was a way to destroy an artifact or enchantment for really cheap that also allowed you to give your opponent life, which was relatively meaningless when you're infecting them. But because those disenchants aren't very good, we actually see 0 copies of really any disenchant effect from the sideboard here from Whetstone.
So there's that backup Blighted Agent. See what else Whetstone wants to do here. Going to be a Glistener Elf as well.
Now remember, Whetstone did start this game on 5 cards, so and in the face of a turn 2 Blood Moon is putting up quite the fight. It may still win this game thanks to that second Blighted Agent. We'll see if Belisle has an answer for it.
Right, Whetstone does have 2 cards left over, so potentially could pick another fight. Something like Vines of Ashwood or Blossoming Defense on an Oko activation. Interesting here, Belisle is going to Mystical Dispute that Glistener Elf.
Well, it can pose problems. He's pretty low on life, and even though Gilded Goose can block and the 3/3s can block, the Noble Hierarchs are potentially posing some problems with that Exalted mechanic. Now, I imagine Belisle's going to go after the Blighted Agent with the plus, and that's what's going to happen here.
As the play, it is caught by Vines. Yeah, I would imagine with the way that Belisle fired off that Mystical Dispute, he had another counterspell, but he's not moving quickly on this Vines.
Yeah, probably has some piece of interaction here. I'm curious what it is.
The big tap happening in response. Or maybe not in response at all. It's a follow-up. It's a follow-up Future Sight. That Vines just worked.
Yeah, and if Whetstone has something here to deal a little bit extra damage, the game could end next turn. Ooh, that was a good pickup.
Well, kind of. There's Mishra's Bauble into Snow-Covered Forest, but that Blighted Agent just has Shroud till end of turn, yeah? Or
oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
Renin 6 is on top of the library. It could pick off a Noble Hierarch, but Whetstone's already a pump spell shy of lethal, right?
Right.
Bauble is going to take a look at Whetstone's top card. Hoping not to see a pump spell there. It's like a pass. He will draw the Renin 6, so he left up some mana here.
Yeah, Explosive is the top card, not an instant, and it looks like the top card, he knows the top card is a pump spell.
Belisle has to pick him up.
Wow.
Got a bit aggressive with that Mystical Dispute, it seems like, and John Whetstone evens things up.
I mean, the Metallic Rebuke, it's not going to counter much in that scenario, right? Like the first instance that he could have cast it was when Whetstone had 5 mana and cast a Blighted Agent, thanks to that second Noble Hierarch. Chose to use the Metallic Rebuke on the Glistener Elf just as a means of trying to contain all the infect threats over the course of the game. Unfortunately, though, just one piece of interaction short, at the very least one piece of instant speed interaction short.
Players going to be comfortable as they gear up for game number 3 here in their KNOX chairs. We have them down there. We have them up here. KNOX, we've got your back. You can save 10% at checkout when you visit KNOX.com/SCG. Definitely the biggest quality of life upgrade on the tour since I've been working here.
Oh, yeah. That and Peace Lily coming back. That was nice.
True. I guess he's tried to leave a couple times.
Well, he had 1 year. I believe it was my first year doing more coverage, where he only did like 4 shows all year, right? Mm-hmm. And that's sad because he's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
he's got kids to raise.
He does have kids to raise, multiple, and he's got another one on the way. It's wild to think about. Old Papa Sully.
Sure, he's definitely raising those kids on some good no-nonsense values. I'd like to be a fly on the wall for some of that.
I don't know how someone can literally hit on Twitter at a 100% rate, but I have yet to see a bad take from the Patrick Sullivan on Twitter.
He picks his spots.
That's true.
You and I, we just like
fire them off at random.
Just throw garbage into the void, and if it catches, it's the best day of our life.
Yeah.
You know. Right, looks like both players on 7 for game number 3. Belisle is going to fire off a Scalding Tarn.
I forgot until you said the KNOX chairs were like really comfy and stuff that I could just lean back right now, right? That's what I'm doing. It feels great.
Very smart.
Yeah. Back support.
Steam Vents is the fine. Belisle to 17. Where do you cast off of a Steam Vents on turn 1?
Definitely not Arkham's Astrolabe.
No.
Probably one of the spell bombs.
It's Mox Opal, Explosives on 0, and Emery.
There it is.
That's what you cast.
That plays. Turn 1 Emery. With the explosives, pretty good. Pretty good.
Metallic Rebuke, another explosives. That's a nice find. Stomping Ground and Mishra's Bobble. So some good toys for the Emery.
It's going to be really hard for Whetstone. Unless he has a Dismember. If Whetstone doesn't have that, there's a chance that just Emery plus Injured Explosives is good enough. That means he's going to have to win with Inkmoth Nexus, which is pretty difficult to do when all your Noble Hierarchs get blown up.
Right. Waterlog Grove Go was turn 1 for Whetstone.
Yeah. That was not quite as good.
No.
So Emery here probably going to start recurring that Mishra's Bobble just to draw a bunch of extra cards. That's exactly where you want to be. When you're ahead on the battlefield, you just also want to get ahead on raw cards.
So Bobble back. Snow-covered forest is the land for turn. Here's a Gilded Goose. There's a food token.
You did it in a very sing-song way, and now I have to do it. I'm sorry. He's bringing Bobble back.
Yep.
John Whetstone gonna have a heart attack.
Are you done?
Bringing
of course
Bobble
back.
back.
You're not. Of course you're not.
Okay, all right.
Bobble takes a look at
I'm
Whetstone's
done now.
card.
I'm done now.
Snow-covered forest, land number 2 for Whetstone, and here's a Glistener Elf. That's going to get Galvanic blasted.
Yeah, but is it?
Teamer.
I just assumed he's going to protect it because he didn't cast it on 1 for a reason.
Presumably, yeah. Now, what do you? If you block for it, I guess you force the explosives that would kill the goose.
Yep. I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, you got to do something. Vines will protect. Whetstone to 19 off of the Grove.
Would you also say that the vines attack sometimes? Look, you keep doing okay because it protect. But then when you're winning the game, it attack. Yeah. Yeah. All I got is memes and songs. I got, it's just all brainworms up there.
Well, here's a nice one for Belisle. Urza, Lord High Artificer. Construct token. Bunch of mana hanging out yet. Got an active Emery. How about explosives on 1? How do you feel about that?
It's pretty good.
Not
and the
bad.
ability to crack it. So at this point, I cannot imagine Whetstone can possibly win.
It's going to be rough.
And it's, it's turn 3. It's pretty good gameplay.
You'd never know
when you can't possibly win and you've had 2 turns of Magic.
Looking at the battlefield, you'd never know it was turn 3. You'd assume this is about turn 14 of a Commander game.
Yeah.
You know, Belisle's been casting ramp spells, and Whetstone has been getting strip mines. Not the case. Not the case. It's a turn 3 modern game.
Classic. I'm just mad. I probably shouldn't be so mad at this point.
Yeah, I mean, another year or 2 in the desk here will break you. You'll stop being upset.
Look,
They're all just games, man.
I told at the beginning of the year, actually at the end of last year, I specifically asked Cedric Phillips, who was building our schedule, if I could just only cover the Pioneer Opens. That was my request.
Yeah.
Because that's all I want to play. Because it's new and it's fun, and you don't really put 14 permanents on the battlefield by turn 2 or 3. It's
So
usually 2 or 3 permanents on the battlefield.
You're telling me that you asked our boss to give me less work.
I mean, we're or I implied heavily that all modern opens should become Pioneer.
Wouldn't mind that. So here's a second Waterlog Grove and a Blighted Agent for Whetstone. Boom goes the Dynamite. Glistener Elf down off that explosives. Gilded Goose joins it. Don't think Belisle minds that one.
Nope. So Belisle now, though, going to untap, able to recast the Injured Explosives from Graveyard again via Emery, and cast it for X equals 2, and pop it thanks to all the extra mana generated from the Urza. And now, this is actually a lock that is really tough for Whetstone to get out of because his deck doesn't play a whole bunch of actual counter spells. Like Spell Pierce here, just pay 2, and then it resolves, and then you can still pay 2. So
yep, Emery brings back the explosive. Spell Pierce tries to catch it, but Belisle is able to pay, and Construct Mox Opal can still pay for the explosives, and actually can tap to activate itself. If I'm not mistaken, this card does not tap to activate.
Yeah, much like the Spell Bombs, Ether Spell Bomb and such, they don't actually tap to sack they just have mana and sack. So Urza does have that cheeky little ability to tap it for mana to pay for its own ability, which is hilarious.
It's a weird one to think about because Explosives is from 5th Dan, and that's back when a lot of wacky things did happen. For example, the set before that,
Skull Clamp.
Dark Steel. Well, yes, that. However, I'm talking about artifacts and rules.
Sure.
Trinisphere from Dark Steel
Yep.
doesn't work if it's tapped. So we were still doing some weird stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah.
Does it say it on the card?
It does.
Huh. The old mono artifact throwback or whatever, I guess? Or is that a poly artifact? No, poly means
It's
they
a continuous artifact.
Yes. Is that an actual thing?
Yes, it's mono poly continuous. There's 3 outdated artifact types.
Love to make things really complicated.
Whetstone's going to go with digging. Waterlog Grove will draw a card. He plays a snow-covered forest, but not really going to be able to do anything against that Explosives on 2.
Speaking of continuous artifacts, those don't work when they're tapped, right? Or is mono artifact work when they're tapped?
Mono artifact means you tap them to use them once per turn. Continuous artifacts used to have a rule built into the game, not the cards themselves. However, some Winter Orb specifically got the text added to it that it only works when it's untapped.
Okay.
But a lot of rules actually changed. The range of continuous artifacts stopped having a rule that stopped them from working.
Well, specifically, I wanted to talk about the cards Winter Orb and Static Orb. I am very happy that the cards Opposition and Static Orb aren't legal in Modern.
That would be unpleasant.
Because with Urza, things would get wild.
Urza Winter Orb is messed up.
Yes. Urza Static Orb would be better, though. That's what I'm saying.
Well, just Ultimate Adovan Bond, then.
All right. Well, I'll get right on that.
That's not quite the same. So Whetstone did connect with the Blighted Agent. Belisle one-time poisoned, but goes ahead and fires off the Explosives end step. Not really under any pressure. Now untapping with that big Urza.
Yeah, and the game should be over pretty quickly. Whetstone's deck, Infect in general, not very good at playing defense. This Construct going to do some major damage. Emery going to keep recurring Engineered Explosives until Whetstone is basically dead and gone. But I think Belisle is just looking for an artifact here to make this a pretty clean 2-turn clock.
The Sharpshooter. Well, what's the Urza deck's finisher move called? It's got to have its own special name.
Well, can we call it just the sleeper hold?
Let's come up with a
Let's
list.
just call it the sleeper hold.
Because it puts people to sleep.
Right.
the Urza lock. I like that. Director Rob's better at this than you.
Okay. I never claimed to be good at anything.
The Emery. I think the Emery Explosives needs its own move. It's like the
pop and lock.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
The Emery Exploder. I'm going to pass on that. All right, Rob's back. He's back to being the director.
Yeah. Back to being an intern, Rob. After that one. All right, well, Belisle here just putting the finishing touches. Going to spin with Urza. Just wants to basically guarantee a victory here, so wants to put as much pressure on Whetstone as possible using all the mana. Could play this pretty fast and loose if he so chose, and I think that would get the job done, but doing the due diligence necessary to make sure that there are no possible outs for Whetstone in the next few turns.
So we call it the Dynamite. Emery bringing back Explosives is the Dynamite. So Emery targets Engineered Explosives, and you say, oh, Emery's going for the Dynamite.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm off that.
Well, I'm on it, so
all right.
Buckle up.
Well, how come you... Okay, so now you're going to be kooky and fun?
Yes. Ooh, that might be copyrighted. Director Rob, all right. You're on our legal team now. I'm going to watch out for that. Don't want to get sued.
Well, here's Explosives again.
The Dynamite. All right, so Explosives online. That's a big Construct token coming across with Urza. What do we got? 3, 4, 5. 6 damage. Whetstone to 5 is my count.
That's what I got.
Whetstone's going to use that Waterlog Grove.
Does notably take him off of blue mana, but maybe just need to draw anything.
Yeah, he doesn't have anything with haste, you know. He's just kind of dying to the Construct, right? Once upon a time for 2 mana. Not going to give up. Scrappy, John Whetstone is.
It could be anything.
And there is the concession. Sean Belisle going to be a 2-1 winner. Teamer Urza over John Whetstone on Infect. Gonna